Welcome into the Pursuit of Manliness podcast, where we are vigorously equipping men to pursue biblical manliness. My name is Jarrett Samuels. I'm the host of the podcast. Men, as always, I'd like to begin by thanking you for checking out today's podcast episode. Now, when you get the opportunity, make sure you visit our website, thepursuitofmanliness.com. You can find this episode, the whole catalog of 400 plus podcast episodes. You can learn more about our email newsletter. You can join the herd, and you can check out the gear store. Now, in the gear store, I want to highlight our fall men's retreat, September 27th to 28th here in Indianapolis, Indiana. For the last 4 years, the September fall men's retreat has proven to be a powerful weekend where men from all over come to Indianapolis to hang out and camp out if they want. We worship, we eat, we just build community, build camaraderie, and we want you to be a part of it. Now, I want to remind you the Wednesday podcast is sponsored by Loader Road Goods out of Coshocton, Ohio. Now, when we started this partnership, I talked to you about a sheath that he made for one of my hatchets. Every sheath that Loader Road Goods makes is custom to your particular knife or your particular hatchet. So you reach out to Chris, you let him know what you're working with, let him know how that size, dimensions, and what you need, and he can make it for you. Remember, there's at least a 2-week lead out time in this, so give yourself some grace, give Chris some grace, and make sure you support Loader Road Goods. So I said at the beginning of the year, I'd like to once a month, and I think I missed a month at least, talk about a biography of some kind, a book of some kind. But I also had said that I'm committing to reading more autobiography type books, because I want to learn about people that I just don't know enough about, or I'd like to learn more, or just be challenged by their life. And that was certainly the case with this book. This is, as you can see from the title, an autobiography of Davy Crockett, edited by Stephen Brennan. Now, I was in Tennessee a couple years ago, maybe, and someone referenced Davy Crockett. And I remember thinking, I don't think I know a lot about Davy Crockett. I mean, I could kind of get an image in my mind of a guy wearing like a raccoon hat, kind of musket, and, one of them old, guys in the 1800s. I mean, I could kind of see that in my mind, but I thought, I don't know a lot about him. So I went online somewhere and I bought this book. It appears I bought it on Thrift Books, which I would recommend because they're cheap. And I didn't pay that price for it. What's on the back of it? So here's this book that is Davy Crockett telling his life. Now, he doesn't write it like a journal entry. Like right now, I'm also reading slowly Lewis and Clark, the Journal of Lewis and Clark. And they'll write the day, the year, so you get an idea, it's June 9th of this year, and so, okay, that you get a kind of an image of what was going on in our country or where they're at. And I didn't know Lewis and Clark had that many people traveling with them to start with. However, when it comes to Davy Crockett, I am fascinated by his life. One of the first stories I remember in this is him and a canoe and some his brothers or friends or whatever, and they get in this dangerous situation, and this old boy comes out and saves him, pulls him out to shore. I mean, one of those instances where you think, man, he should have been dead right there. I don't know if you have any instances like that in your life. I do, where you think, man, how did I survive that? Grace of God, no question about it. It's interesting because last summer I was in eastern Tennessee, and right where we were camped out, there was a sign, and that sign was that story of Davy Crockett being saved out of the water. I'm looking at that water, and it didn't look the way it did in the book. However, when you're a kid, and who knows what landscape and everything was like, and all that, then we have a different infrastructure in 2023, 24 now than they would have back then. And to stand at that spot was just pretty cool because, again, a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have had no real concept of why that spot mattered. We stayed in the birthplace of Davy Crockett State Park, I think, something like that. Pretty cool. So one of my main takeaways from this guy, as you can assume from a guy that lived in the 1800s, is what a rugged life they had. I think about my kids. I'm trying to equip them, as most parents would, to live outside of my house at some point, to function in society, to make a way, to make a living, save some money, understand bills, understand food costs, understand showing up to work, those types of things. You're pretty much thrown into the fire here at this age, and This is a guy, did not have hardly any education. As a matter of fact, he ran away because he got in a fight at school. Education wasn't his thing. The reason why I think that's important is because when you read an autobiography of someone like this, and Stephen Brennan edited it, but he let it be Davy Crockett, it can be tough to read. Because if you don't have education, if you haven't been told, haven't been taught reading, writing, and arithmetic. I know we're teaching all kinds of other baloney right now, but you get back to the basics, skills that you actually need to go function in a real world. You're gonna learn to write. You're gonna be able to sound out words. Well, he would sound them out, but if you didn't have any education, you wrote them however you wanted to write them. So there are times when reading this book, you're like, oh, I know what he's saying there. I get what he's trying to spell or what he's trying to write. Kind of like one of your kids. Now, I say that because when I was looking up some notes on this, just to make sure I could hit some high points, because you see post-it notes in here and stuff, but there's no way I could summarize this guy's life in a short podcast like this. I just giving you a synopsis here. So I went to Goodreads.com and looked up this book to see, well, what did some other people say? I noticed that the rating was 3.61 out of 5. And I'm thinking, how do you rate someone writing about their life 3.61 out of 5? It's like me telling you, tell me about your life, and at the end of it I say C-. Like that's my life. What do you mean C-? So as I'm looking at Goodreads.com and I'm looking at some of these descriptions, I don't care for the reader. This is what one guy wrote. Aren't you the reader? You're the guy that picked up the book. His tone didn't fit Crockett's character at all. Well, maybe what you've been told isn't, what Davy Crockett was, because this is what he wrote. Now, I know you might say, well, this is what he wrote. I thought it was entertaining. He thought some of these things were exaggerated. Yeah, hunters have never exaggerated. This guy says, poor grammar aside, he doesn't like the book either. Look, this is how people used to live. And if you consider where we're at now and you think we're growing soft, that's on us. That's on you, and that's on me. If I think I'm growing soft, that's because I've chose softness. I've chose to live in climate-controlled environments. I chose to do things indoors and not outdoors. I chose to go purchase food from the store and not go gather it. Or I purchased bottles of water, which I do often, instead of collecting water. Or I plug things into the wall instead of collecting energy or starting fires or whatever. Like I've said before, we got to do some things that stretch us. This guy had no choice. This guy had no choice. Now, as I said, I referenced school briefly, not his thing, not a fan, and he runs away at age 13, and he doesn't come back till he's like 15 years old. And it's completely fascinating to me that when he does return back home, he's concerned to how he'll be received. There's some kind of gathering at his house that it's more than just his family there, and he just finds a seat at the table, and he just starts eating. Now, during those 2 years being gone, he should be dead. And he is outsmarting people who got years ahead of him. He understands he can move faster than these wagons are moving, or he's just got this built-in compass inside of him. And so he comes back home, and as he's eating at the table and whatever, you ever seen people who've lived a hard life? They age quite a bit. They've done a lot of things. They don't look exactly the same. Well, I imagine that's what he looks from 13 to 15. And his sister does recognize him, and there's a great celebration and such. His dad has to basically farm him out to another guy to pay off a debt and to work it off. And this work it off wasn't like rake leaves, pick up sticks, and trim the hedges. This is real manual labor. And then there's a time where Crockett goes off and he'll work and he'll get money and he buys some land and he gives it to his father. And so this was a guy that understood the law of cultivation. Whether it was cultivating relationships or it was cultivating the land or it was cultivating, getting food, he would be described as a farmer and a hunter. But he also enlisted in some military life. He also was in Congress. He served in politics. He ends up dying on the last day of the the battle at the Alamo. He was killed by the Mexican army. He joined Colonel William B. Travis, and he's fighting for Texas independence. March 6th, 1836. If that doesn't add to the folklore of Davy Crockett. Now, the reason why I'm reading about Davy Crockett, and I could just Google it, and I got a few tabs open here just to make sure I hit the high points. I'll talk about his wife and kids in just a second. 2 wives, they both die eventually, right? Is because I want to know what they say. I want to know what they say. I've read biographies. I've went online to kind of see how people, summarize that biography, because I don't think I'm good at summarizing. I'm like, well, how did they do it? What are the high points that they hit? And you'll find that a lot of them, kind of like what I'm doing here, kind of take their own angle, their own slant. At the end of the day, who are we to really take our own slant or angle in someone's life? Here's a guy who did not have a lot of confidence when it came to the women folk. He knew he wanted to get married. He was determined to get married, and he ends up getting married to a woman named Polly. And they have 3 children, and they're married, I believe, for 9 years. I mean, back then in the early 1800s, every time you were pregnant, it was a life or death situation for you and the baby. So for 9 years, and then he eventually marries a woman, Elizabeth, who was also a widow. So kind of like the two of them come together going like, hey man, I'm raising 3 kids, she's raising 2 kids, and I believe they end up having 3 more kids on their own. I find it interesting, I believe it was with Polly, that he has gone so long on this excursion to go hunt and go, provide and whatever, they actually think he's dead. Like, they get the idea that, man, this guy must have died now. Again, completely different world. Communication was radically different. Life expectancy was different. It was all about survival. It was all about trying to survive, provide, be ahead of the winter, be ahead of, all the people trying to attack your house, steal your cattle, steal your wife. This was all about leveraging what you had and trying to maintain and work and keep what you had. We talked before about the idea, and Josh Smith does it in the book of Titus 10. He talks about the plow and the sword. If you were to read about the biography of Davy Crockett, you would certainly understand about the plow and the sword. Now, while Davy's not really using a sword, more of a rifle here, but that's the idea. The plow is to work and to cultivate and to grow and to see things come to fruition. And then the sword would be to protect it, to be proactive, to make sure that you're not being pillaged by those who seek to kill and destroy, like the Bible says. And so this guy finds himself in politics, where that's usually where I kind of, it gets fuzzy for me. I'm not a big political guy. I know we need to know about politics. I know we need to pray about those who are in those places, because for some people it is your wheelhouse. It's not my wheelhouse. Same way like Teddy Roosevelt. I grab a lot of things about his life. When I get into politics, it gets a little fuzzy. There's a lot of moving pieces, like politics does today. Well, here he is, and he's in politics, and he's opposing Andrew Jackson, another guy who's from Tennessee. And so he is, he doesn't choose the easiest path. I can't not see a time in Davy Crockett's life where he chooses the easiest path. Even the fact where he's leveraging or arguing or negotiating with his wife of why he needs to go fight in a war. I don't know about you, but there are a lot of men who would say, if I could get out of it, or if I could find a way that I didn't have to do it, man, I would certainly take it. Where he would do that. He would even take their place if and when that was necessary. Once again, I go back to the idea that when we read things like this, I think it's easy to dismiss it as folklore. It's easy to dismiss it as exaggerated, or to completely be disconnected from the time that this was written. Obviously, life back in the 1800s was quite a bit different than 2024. Some of those are good things. Some of those are not good things. For some of those that are not good things, I would say it goes back to, again, how we started, that we've grown soft in a lot of ways. We've grown soft in the fact that we can just have everything at our disposal. We can just ring up whatever, we can Uber whatever, we can get in our car and have whatever. And there are pluses to that, but there are certainly some minuses. And the minuses is we have grown very conditioned. I think the more you grow conditioned, the more the group behind you will grow even more conditioned. So once again, if we are thinking that maybe we're a little softer than those who've come before us, just think about a generation or two before us. Just think about a generation or two that was 17 years old and they lied so that they could get into the military. That they would say, no, I'm 18 or whatever. Think about the generation that sat at home waiting for the birthdays to be posted because they knew that they would be drafted into the military or not. So if your birthday showed up on live television and it was, June 1st, then if you had June 1st, you had like 30 days to report. You have been drafted in. Now, if we lived in a time like that, and I'll be honest, I'm thankful we don't right now. I do think we would have more love for our country if we had that concern for, those things that would be on the line, that would cause us a little bit of fear and trepidation. But that's a different time. And what we talk often about within the pursuit of manliness, we've talked a lot about this when it comes to the framework of biblical manhood: spiritually sound, mentally strong, relationally established, physically fit. We talk about what fits and what doesn't fit. If that's what we're trying to be, if that's what we're trying to do here, and I'm not trying to be Davy Crockett, but I think, as I've said before, I don't think God wastes anybody's life. I don't think that God wastes anyone's life. I think there's a lot we can learn from. There's a lot we can take away. And we can say, okay, what can I learn from that? If at the minimum we could say, I think I need to exert a little more gumption, a little more effort, a little more vigor when it comes to life. I just want to read this. We got our breakfast and cut out again. We killed 4 large and very fat bears that day. We hunted out the week, and in that time we killed 17, all of them first rate. Now, you're probably not killing 4 bears, and you're definitely not killing 17. However, where are you exerting real vigor? Where are you developing real grit? In what areas of your life are you developing calluses and blisters because you are just in a relentless pursuit of what, fill in the blank? A guy like this has a lot we can take away from. A guy like that lived a life where he continually scratched and clawed, cultivated, would work and keep. He lived with the plow and the sword mentality. Hey, nobody's going to give it to me. If I'm going to have it, if I'm going to be able to provide for it, I need to work for it. And from that, man, we can be thankful. So, book I would consider: An Autobiography of Davy Crockett. Man, thank you for listening. Thank you guys who watch. Let's keep pursuing biblical manliness.